Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2004 sports drama film Million Dollar Baby. This wasn't for me. I did not like this film. I do not understand the unanimous praise that this gets. If you love it, if people love it, that's cool, it's fine, that's awesome. But for me, it was more likely to knock me out due to boredom or due to frustration in just how badly it was structured than anything else. I just got to be honest here, and I'm going to stand my ground. I've picked this fight, and I will fight it to the very end. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, though, I would like to give a shout out to Kevin for requesting this review. Million Dollar Baby is directed by Clint Eastwood, and he won. I think he won the Oscar for Best Director for this, or I think maybe he was nominated. But I think he did. I think he won the Academy Award for Best Director for this film. He did. I don't really get it. I'm not going to say that his direction was bad. It wasn't. But from what I saw, this was not Oscar worthy directing. It was solid, it was serviceable, it was decent enough. The framing was fine, but it wasn't anything unique or particularly that interesting. The camera angles, the usage of pans, zooms, and other camera techniques, they were somewhat inspired, but they weren't particularly super inspiring. And they definitely weren't what I would consider to be like a technical masterclass. The boxing scenes were shot well enough, but they lacked a certain shot of adrenaline and an extra punch to them that other boxing films or other sports movies have provided when it comes to their sequences involving their respective sports. Like it was one of those things where I never really felt like I was in the fight, which is what I really like to see when it comes to a boxing film in particular. So I didn't really have the same visceral feel or experience that I got from other boxing films. And the more somber, more sad scenes, uh, they were definitely set up in a way and shot in a way that definitely, in my opinion, provided the film with for the most part, with the right amount of emotion. Uh, but even then, the direction could only do so much due to the glaring flaws of the film's script. But directing wise, I think Clint did a good job. I don't think he did a particularly amazing job though. I just don't really see this film as that kind of movie. And I think in Eastwood's own filmography as a director, he's done much more impressive work than what he did in Million Dollar Baby. The film is written by Paul Haggis, and it's adapted from a short story that was from a compilation of other boxing stories called Rope Burns. And when this film came out, this script got a ton of praise. It was even nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars. And honestly, this is the weakest part of the film to me. And I'm probably going to catch some flack for this and some strays, catch some punches. I genuinely don't think this script is very good. And it starts with the clunky narration uh, from Morgan Freeman's character, Eddie. I understand why the narration is there. It's there to set up the reveal at the end, but even that doesn't work, and I will explain why soon enough. But the narration just comes and goes randomly throughout the movie, and there's a lot of moments where Morgan Freeman is either saying things that just seem like it's poor man's Shawshank, uh, quotes that are semi-inspirational, or he's just detailing things that are happening on screen in the most pointless, useless way imaginable. We don't need Morgan Freeman's narration to show a scene of Clint Eastwood's character Frankie paying off other managers so they would be willing to pit their fighters against Mackie. You don't need Morgan Freeman and his narration to explain what's happening. And there's a lot of moments where it's just telling instead of showing these things, and it really hurts the flow of the story. It makes the film feel very disjointed. It makes the pacing really slow, and it makes it hard to really get that invested in the story and the characters because there's this random shoehorned in just pointless narration that's shoved in there at random intervals throughout the entirety of the story. And then you find out with the reveal at the end that, oh, there's a reason for it. It's Eddie telling Frankie's daughter all these stories and telling her that her father was actually a good guy and he wasn't such a bad person after all. And that would be something that would work if it was executed properly, but it was not because we never know. We never find out why Frankie is estranged from his daughter. We never find that out at any point in the film. We just know that he wrote letters to her and they were returned to sender, or she never read them and they were estranged. So, for all we know, he could have legitimately done some messed up shit to his daughter, and that's why she doesn't want to have anything to do with him. Or it could have been the opposite. He could have done nothing wrong, but it was a misinterpretation, or, things were just lost in translation between the two, and they have beef. But, if they just talked, maybe they could have worked it out. Like, the father, from Home Alone, old man Marley, and his son. But no, we don't find out any of that. We don't know the details of that relationship at all. So the whole scene at the end, when it's a reveal that the narration is Morgan Freeman trying to stand up for his old friend to his friend's daughter, it carries no weight. And it just makes the narration even more frustrating because they're like, well, that was still pointless because we don't know why she was mad at her dad. We don't know why Morgan Freeman has to defend him in the first place. So, right from the start, it takes a swing and it misses wildly. Then we get to the structure of the script, which is the biggest whiff of them all, because it starts out as a okay but kind of generic sports drama that's trying to be an inspiring underdog story, almost like a female Rocky. So instead of it being a male boxer, it's a female boxer who is down on her luck and wants to go the distance. And she winds up joining Frankie Dunn's boxing gym. She wants to be a boxer, but she doesn't know what she's doing, but she's got determination, and it ultimately leads to her being trained by Frankie. even though he doesn't want to do it initially, eventually relents, and then the two form an unlikely bond with one another. And Maggie rises up the ranks and wins a lot of fights, and then ultimately gets a title bout with the current champion. And the first half of the script is fine, but it's nothing spectacular, and it also has issues beyond the genericness of it. It has issues in terms of, first off, why does Maggie really want to be a boxer more than anything else? What is her motivation for being a boxer? Beyond, oh, I just want to box so I can potentially get my way out of a bad situation in life. Okay, all right, but why? Why is she such a fighter? Why does she want to fight? We never know that. All you get is, oh, I don't want to be poor anymore and I don't want to be stuck waitressing. Okay, all right, but why boxing? That's never really established. Even early on with Frankie and his whole thing, he has another boxer under his wing, and you watch him fight in the beginning of the film, but you know nothing about this boxer. You don't know a thing about his connection with Frankie, so you're just left just kind of, I don't know, just out of the loop initially. And then you get a little bit of their dynamic. But by the time you start to get to know this guy more, he already leaves Frankie and joins another trainer and then goes and wins the title. So it's like, okay, what did that add to the movie? Not much, other than Frankie's stubbornness, not willing to allow this boxer of his to get a title fight when he wanted to, led him to go find somebody else and go win the title without Frankie. Other than that, that's the only thing that really is ever established when it comes to this whole portion of the film. And it's honestly a pretty boring start to the movie because there's no reason to even care about this boxer. I don't even remember his name, for one, and there's really no reason for it to necessarily even be there. Like, why do we even need this portion if it's going to be just really just there for maybe like 30 minutes and then it's gone and you never even hear from that boxer, you never see that boxer, you know nothing about him ever again. So, what was even the point of that? I guess the character's name is Big Willie. Like, what is the point of Big Willie and his whole arc? Seems kind of pointless to me. It's supposed to establish Frankie Dunn as a trainer. Okay, you can do that in a different way. Honestly, I think it should have established Maggie more early on. Get to know her more. Maybe see her working at the diner. Maybe see her home life more. Get to know her more. See the scene when she signs up for the gym, pays in advance for 6 months, stuff like that. We don't get any of that. And that's another problem I definitely have with this script is a lot of the character depth is very minimal. Like, it's not as strong and it's not as well built as it should be, especially for a film that's trying to take you on an emotional roller coaster. But I have to admit, once you get to the point when Frankie does decide to train Maggie and the two start to train together, there's some magic there. I can't say the same about what's going on with Eddie and especially not with Danger. The stuff involving the Danger character is terrible. It's really, really bad. Other than maybe one little joke that kind of made me chuckle, most of the scenes involving that character, for one, just feel like padding. Two, are painfully cringe in terms of the writing and the execution. And there's just a serious tonal shift too when it comes to those scenes. The dialogue the Danger says feels like it's completely alien to the rest of the movie. It feels like the kind of dialogue you would hear in a boxing comedy, not in a serious boxing drama. And then you have these other random scenes where Frankie will go to a church and he'll like harass the priest, and then there'll be this other stuff, and I don't know what that's adding to the story either, other than making Frankie even more surly of a character. But eventually, once the film starts to focus on Frankie and Maggie and their connection and their vibes and the two of them clicking and Maggie becoming a better boxer and Maggie winning fights, then the film starts to kind of pull me in a little bit, I have to be honest, even though it is a little definitely a generic sports story. The one in a million shot, and she's making it, and she's rising up the ranks. I will also admit the way that she rises up the ranks is pretty lazy. Some pretty lazy, uninspired writing by Haggis. She wins almost all of her fights. Not almost. She wins all of her fights by knockout in like the first round. That is really lazy writing. You're not going to show any sort of different kind of dynamic in these fights. It's just going to be like she's female Mike Tyson. I don't buy it, especially for somebody who's like, what is she, like 32 at this point in time, and she has barely any training except for a few months with this guy, and now she's knocking out her fighters in the first round every time. It just seems rather incredulous. So okay, she is like knocking people out like she's a female Mike Tyson, and then it sets things up for her fight against the Blue Bear. And even prior to the Blue Bear fight, you do have some other things that are thrown in there. You have the whole scene with Maggie buying a house for her mother, and her mother freaking out and be like, well, am I gonna keep my how am I gonna keep my welfare and have a house at the same time? You just don't think. You don't think about things, Maggie. And everyone's laughing at you when I tell them that you're a boxer. They laugh at you. Like the way that mother character was written was just also another aspect of this script that's just laughably over the top to me. Like comical to the extreme. And it gets even more comical later on. But the whole they're laughing at you, like, oh god, come on, man. And you get to the title fight, and the Blue Bear is established as a dirty fighter, but the way that she is dirty is absolutely absurd, to the point where she should have been disqualified before the end of the first round during her fight with Maggie, because she's just cheating in a way that's so blatant and so obvious that I don't even know if Haggis even watched an actual boxing match. Did he watch any boxing to prepare for this script? Did he do that at all? Because I would think if he did, he would know that this shit it would not be acceptable. And I know there are other boxing movies that do stuff like this, but when Drago is cheating after the bell in Rocky 4, it's Rocky 4. That film is in tone and in structure very much a lot like a comic book movie. I love it, but it's very over the top, and it's not intended to be realistic. It's almost a fantasy. But with this film, it's supposed to be gritty. It's supposed to be grounded. It's supposed to be real. And you got cheap shot actions from this boxer that are just completely ridiculous and totally unrealistic. I mean, it's to the point where actual female boxers who fought the boxer who played the Blue Bear in the ring commented on that, because there's interviews with female boxers from around the time of the film and getting their thoughts on it, and they're like, this is a bunch of bullshit. Like, this fight would have been over. She would have been disqualified before the end of the first round, and no fighter gets away with this. And this is the only reason that is able to set up the film's shocking twist. And it just makes the twist itself not work. It works for other people, does not work for me, because I cannot buy the reason for it happening in the first place. It's such an integral, vital backbone of this entire screenplay. And the way it's written is so absurd and silly that I can't take it seriously. And even the way that it happens is also something that's almost straight out of a fantasy. Because you have the fight, initially Maggie's overwhelmed, then she starts to get a little bit of an upper hand after cheating herself, which I didn't like that either. It was never established that she seemed like somebody who was a cheater, and now she's cheating in order to get an upper hand. And she's not that much different from the fighter who's considered to be a dirty fighter, beyond the fact that she's just cheating in a different way. And so, but because of her cheating, she gets the upper hand. And then that pisses off the blue bear, who then decides to take a swing at Maggie's face when she's not looking. And then Maggie conveniently falls right onto the stool in a position that breaks her neck. And the way that it's set up is like a 1 in a million shot. And everything about the scene was already ridiculous, was already incredulous, was already asinine. And then you get to the neck snap and the way that it happens, and it's laughable. I'm sorry. I wasn't shocked. I was more just honestly taken aback by how ridiculous it was. And then you get to the really grim, dark second half of the film, where now it's turning into a euthanasia story, where Maggie, she's paralyzed from the neck down, and she doesn't want to live that way. So she shows a little bit of fight, but early on, when she realizes her predicament, she doesn't want to go on anymore, to the point where she asks her trainer, Frankie, to kill her. And of course, he's like, I can't do that. But she does show a little bit of fight when her family comes over and tries to manipulate her into signing away her money to them. And she wises up and turns them down and basically tells them to fuck off. And one of the few moments in the second half that I thought was actually genuinely effective in terms of the writing. And then after that, it's just a long dirge of Maggie being sad and depressed and wanting to die, and then Frankie being conflicted and not wanting to kill her, and then eventually he does. The film ends with him killing Maggie, takes out her breathing tube, injects her full of adrenaline. Now the screenplay says that the adrenaline will make it so she dies without pain and dies quickly, but in reality, that would make her die in a very painful way. But that's just another example of the lack of research that Paul Haggis put into this screenplay. This film has an 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb. It's considered by so many people to be such a masterwork, and you have a screenplay that just has such an unbelievable lack of research. medical research, boxing research. Like, I don't get it. I really don't. And also the emotional manipulation is so over the top in this script to the point where it's punching you in the face and it's telegraphing its moves every time it does it. So, unlike other people, it didn't work for me. I wasn't a blubbering mess at the end of this movie. I wasn't crying my eyes out. I didn't shed a single tear. You can call me soulless if you want for saying that. But I didn't cry because it didn't hook me. It didn't tug at my heartstrings. I mean, even the whole thing with her getting put down by her trainer, I saw that coming because of the line of dialogue when she's talking about her dog that was injured and lost a limb and was sick. And then she talked about putting her dog down. And I was like, okay, that's foreshadowing because I'm pretty familiar with these kind of screenplays and these kind of stories at this point. I could see how if you thought that this was just gonna be a generic boxing drama about one woman beating the odds and becoming a really good boxer and winning a title fight and then being thrown into a euthanasia fable in the second half, I could see how that could be shocking. But because I was never that super invested in the characters before that moment, even that really didn't affect me that much emotionally. This is a script and a story that heavily relies upon emotional manipulation to succeed. If it does not successfully manipulate you, it flails around on the canvas for 2+ hours. That's exactly what happens with this script and this story. It didn't grab me in that way. So I was just like, oh, I honestly I was just waiting for her to die. And what's crazy is Maggie was established as a character who was a fighter. So why is she all of a sudden not willing to fight? It doesn't even necessarily connect with how she was written as a character. And I'm not saying it needs to be a happy ending. No, you don't have to do that. You can set it up where, for one, she gets, I don't know, maybe she gets a brain aneurysm because she gets hit in the back of the head, and there's nothing to do with the stool or any of that stuff. She gets a brain aneurysm in a coma. She eventually gets out of it, but she's paralyzed, and she has her struggles. She initially thinks about either taking her life. You have the thing where she bites her tongue, maybe tries to take her own life that way, like the way that it's set up in the film as is, but then she pulls out of it. And she still tells her family to stick it where the sun don't shine, and takes her money that she has left, and she invests it into you know helping people. And maybe like the end of the movie is her training with Frankie and learning how to be a trainer and to help train other female fighters. Despite her condition, like she still has a decent amount of knowledge and that she's obtained from Frankie. So she's trying to apply that to future fighters, and that would be inspirational. That would be still a way to have a pretty realistic, pretty gritty ending. She doesn't learn how to walk again. She doesn't learn how to fight again. None of that happens. And I think, it would be bittersweet, but I think that would be a much more satisfying, a much more effective way to end this story. And it got controversy at the time from disabled people for a very clear reason, because they're like, oh, great. The only kind of representation we get in films like this is if it's some kind of pie in the sky thing where the disabled person is reaching a plateau that nobody can possibly reach except in movies, or they're a bunch of sad sacks who quit and don't want to live, and there's no middle ground. There's no real portrayal of us when it comes to these kind of films. And after seeing a movie like this, yeah, I can definitely see why they would have that perspective and that point of view. And the only reason why this euthanasia thing was thrown in there is because Paul Haggis wanted to make this script topical, because of the fact that the Terry Schiavo case was going on at this around this time, and it was all over the news and everybody was talking about it. So he took some current event and he applied it to this script, and it was shoehorned and shoved in there, and it was clunky as hell. And somehow, some way, critics at the time didn't see right through it. They didn't see how clunkily and how haphazardly this was thrown into this script and this story. Instead, they gave it a pass, and I guess it still happens to this day, considering all the massive amounts of praise that this film gets, and this screenplay in particular. To me, this isn't a film about the triumph of the human spirit, or the American dream. Uh, this is a very clunky, confused, cluttered, scripted story that's trying to be two different things, and it never effectively sews any of those things together in the end. They don't wind up becoming seamless. You can see the seams, and they're uneven. And it's just also something that's just so heavily reliant upon emotional manipulation, that if it cannot manipulate you in that way, then it just gets knocked out. So, yeah, I definitely was not a fan of this screenplay and this story. I think there was potential, but it just didn't really live up to it. It could have been a contender, but it wasn't. And then you have the cast, and the cast is not too bad. Clint Eastwood, to me personally, turns in a very mixed bag of a performance, which, from what I've seen from Clint as a dramatic actor, that's kind of par for the course. That's kind of the norm for him. I don't think he's a very good dramatic actor. That's a controversial take, but I really don't think he is. I think he's a better actor in stuff like Dirty Harry, The Rookie. He was really good in Unforgiven, though, or the other westerns that he was in. But I don't really think he's really serious dramatic actor quality, because he doesn't have the range. And people say, "Oh, we make up for it with charm and charisma." I really don't think he does. There's a lot of lines in this that are very flat, and he is lacking chemistry with the actors that he's in a scene with, and he's just saying lines in this with the same inflection over and over again. But I have to admit, there are some sparks between him and Hilary Swank, and I do think that there's some moments, some choice moments where his acting is actually quite good, especially when he's contemplating and thinking about taking Maggie's life. There's some really good acting by Clint in those moments, but that doesn't mean the entirety of the performance was on the same level. Hilary Swank, to me, she was definitely the best performer, and I think she earned the Oscar. I think it was definitely the best performance out of the entire cast, and was a really genuine knockout role for her. And it was a challenging role, and I think she nailed it. She did a really good job. One of the reasons why I don't outright hate this movie is really due to her and the work that she put in. Morgan Freeman is okay as Eddie. I don't understand why he won an Oscar for this. I really don't. I don't get it at all. I've seen him act in other films, and he's done so much better. Uh, but it's not a bad performance. I just think a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the lines he was given were just kind of off and awkward, and there's really only so much you can do with the whole Danger storyline, which is not good. And then, speaking of Danger, Jay Baruchel was a joke. What was that excuse or pathetic attempt of a Southern accent? What the hell was that? He sounded more like the that guy, that Texas kid from D2 The Mighty Ducks. The one that had a lasso, was lassoing up uh, Iceland players at one point during the film. Like, really? What the hell was that accent? It was a caricature. And the rest of the cast is okay, but I mean, what can you really say? Because they don't really have that much screen time. I mean, Mike Coulter as Big Willie didn't really leave much of a big impression. Lucia Riker is the Blue Bear. I didn't really say much of anything. Didn't really have any lines. I guess she was intimidating enough in the ring, so I'll give her that. Anthony Mackie as the overzealous boxer who gets knocked out by Morgan Freeman at the end. I guess he did a good job playing a cocky asshole. Margo Martindale is Maggie's mother. She's gotten a lot of praise for this, and I don't really get it. It's a very stereotypical trailer trash kind of portrayal, and it's very over the top. And Michael Pena is Charel's best friend, just another annoying asshole. So I mean, like, there's really not a lot to say about the rest of the cast. Um, but Clint Eastwood, Hilary Swank, Morgan Freeman, they're decent, but I don't think they're a tremendous trio as a whole. And then the cinematography by Tom Stern is not terrible, but it's I wouldn't call it tremendous. It's not terrific. It's decent enough, and feel the same way about the editing by Joel Cox. The music by Clint Eastwood has some refrains, some little guitar work that's kind of charming, but it's not really featured that prominently in the film, so I can't really say a whole lot about the music, but I guess it's okay. And overall, like, I don't think this is a particularly well-paced film. I don't think it's a well-written film, and I think it's a painfully overrated movie. And I know that a lot of people aren't going to agree with me, and that's fine. To each their own. But this is a film that honestly I'm perfectly okay with never seeing again. And I I'm still baffled by the unanimous decision that people have in regards of this film's quality. I really am. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of $1 Million Baby. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.